Hey guys, welcome to Raw Customs. I'm your host, Patrick Rapolo, and on this episode, I'm going to be showing you how to make the slider steps for my Jeep JK. Now to start with, I actually grabbed some angle iron, mounted it up underneath the pinch weld, added a little bit of bracing on it. This is the actual slider portion of the step itself, which actually could come down on some rocks or something hard and save that body damage to the bottom of your Jeep or any other vehicle you'd like to build some kind of protection for. Now as far as the step itself, I actually made that out of conduit. And I know what you're thinking, are you crazy, man? That's for electricians, electrical work. Actually, I've built several projects out of using conduit. I've built roof racks, which I've loaded well over 1,000 pounds on and ran it for years and never had any type of failure with it. Now, one great thing about using conduit, you can run down to Lowe's or Home Depot and grab it right off the shelf. It's in the electrical section. Another thing, advantage, I guess you could say, is you can actually buy pre-bent 90s there, all the way from 1/2 inch to at least 2-inch piping. This gives you a nice curve, especially for a step if you want to build a roof rack. It's just a great option. You put a little puck in here, add your other straight pipe to it, weld it up, clean it up, and you're there. Alright, just a little note, if you are going to use conduit or weld conduit, it is releases a poisonous gas, I guess, and it can actually make you sick. So number one, I recommend welding it outside. This is what I do. Weld some kind, wear a respirator of some sort, and try not to breathe it. If you do happen to breathe it and start feeling a little sick, get you some whole milk. That usually works to make you feel better. But like I said, most importantly, outside, respirator, don't breathe it. Alright guys, let's see how to do it. I started with a piece of angle iron, 1.5 inch on one side and 1 inch on the other. I'd actually recommend 1.5 by 1.5, but this is just a piece I had laying around. A 45-degree angle is marked on one end and then cut off using a hand bandsaw. I measured from the longest point 73 inches to the other side, made my mark at 45 degrees, and then that end was cut off. Once my piece was cut, I lined it in place underneath the Jeep and clamped it to the pinch weld. With the angle clamped in place, I was able to mark the holes in the pinch weld to the back side of the angle. The angle was then removed and the holes drilled out using a step bit. Once all the holes are drilled, I mounted the angle in place. Next, I took a piece of 2.5 by 2.5 inch angle and cut 3 pieces 3 inches long. I lined the 2.5 inch angle up against the bottom of the Jeep and against the slider angle. Then I made a mark on the angle to align with the factory bolt hole. The mark was then transferred to the center of the angle and then drilled out. Once holes were drilled in all 3 pieces, they were screwed into place. With everything lined up in place, I tack welded the piece together so it could be removed. Next, I took a piece of 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch angle, marked the gap in the angle, and those pieces were cut out, and then welded in to add a little more strength. The excess metal was cut off using a plasma cutter. With the excess removed, the 2 pieces were welded solid. Then a grinder was used to smooth out and clean the weld. For the steps, I used 1.5 inch tubing. I started with 2 pre-bent 90s. They were lined up in place against the slider, and the centerpiece set in place to mark its length. The tube was cut to size. Next, I took a smaller diameter tube that would fit inside my main tube and cut two pieces off at around 4 inches to make pucks. The pucks were slid in the joints where the 90s and the main tubes come together. A small gap was left between the 90 and the main tube, and all three pieces welded together. Once the tube was completely welded together, the weld was cleaned up using a grinder. The tube was grinded smooth until the weld disappeared. Now the pinch weld on the Jeep is slightly slanted in at the bottom, meaning the slider sets at a slight angle. So I lined up my step and marked it at the bottom of the slider to mark an angle cut. Once the tube was cut, it was welded to the slider. I made templates for step plates to fit between the tube and the slider, and then the template was transferred to 3/16 plate steel that was then cut out with a plasma cutter. The step plate was then cleaned up with a grinder. Then holes were marked and drilled out on the drill press using a step bit. Once everything was lined up, the step plate was welded into place. A sanding wheel was used on all the top welds to smooth and polish them out. To finish, everything was prepped for paint, giving a coat of self-etching primer and 2 coats of Rust-Oleum bed spray. The paint was allowed to dry, and then the steps were mounted to the Jeep. Alright guys, that's it for this build. I hope it helps you out. Good luck on your build. God bless, and I'll see you on the next one.